Welcome to the first meta-analysis with the Battle of Amatsu set. It's going to be a pretty good one. We're going to be going over the top decks, showing a little QR codes here and there, and then talking about the balance changes and how they kind of play into all this. Before we get into things too deep, huge shout out to Luzon Nexus and Proto for helping out, submitting a few match screens to help the data collection process. Everything is kind of gathered by hand, so every little bit of help helps out a lot. If you'd like to help out too, head over to teppentopdecks.com and go to the data submission screen, and you can see the instructions of how to help out. Speaking of teppentopdecks.com, that's what we're going to be using for our analysis today, so you can check it out in the description and pop in here and there. There's going to be updates, I would say at least weekly. Now, unless you've been living under a rock, you gotta know that Oichi's Despair Whale and Perish is the deck of this month. This deck is crazy. It is responsible for Black's 44% representation of the metagame, and it actually makes up about 25% of it all by itself. That's like over half. It was crazy. Great Divine Intervention and Ouroboros are the other top two decks, and they're hoping to kind of keep the DWP deck in check with their high cost units or by removing the units from the game. Now, while this has been the case for the past a month overall, the winds are changing. By taking a look at only this last week, we can see that Black still holds the majority stakeholders in the meta, but it's reduced a little bit. And if we go up to the hero art breakdown, Despair Whale and Perish has lost a large chunk of its stranglehold, going down to 16% compared to the 25% we saw before. A lot of this has shifted into Ouroboros and Raging Demon and the other black decks. So now let's talk about what makes these top decks so successful. Despair Whale and Perish is dominating the game by just drowning people in advantage with the hero art that refills the whole field from your graveyard and gives everything a +1/+1 buff. You just get so much advantage. You combine this with powerhouse cards like Tube Foxes and all the destruction you could ever want. DWP creates this perfect recipe for success and domination. Ouroboros is the second most popular black deck. Now this deck attacks the meta by using its insane high roll potential with Living Death and its generally high cost units that other black decks can struggle to remove. Great Divine Intervention has remained a popular choice even with the new set. This is not only because it has the ability to hit the ground running hard, preventing the opponents from setting up, but it also has the benefit of removing your opponent's units from the game, which applies a lot of pressure to the top two black decks, which both involve bringing things back from the grave. The new development of this meta is the Metsu Shoryuken decks, which hope to dominate their opponents by combining as many keywords as they can onto one unit. Things like combo, heavy pierce, agility, crush, just get them all in there. Whether you're using Shimazu or the Rising Sun, aka the boat, these decks can win very quickly and very decisively if you don't have the right answers. This strategy has taken Metsu Shoryuken from a completely obscure and unused hero art into the fourth most popular hero art. Even though many players are bemoaning the absurdity of black, which they should, it's very absurd, I find it fascinating that the creativity of players has allowed Metsu Shoryuken to attack the meta, bringing it out of obscurity. So much so that you have to respect it. I've even seen some Despair Whale and Perish players on the ladder taking in extra vials as an extra way to deal with the 5-cost Rising Sun. In light of this meta discussion, the balance changes seem a little off the mark. We've got Grizzled Veteran, we've got a damage cap, which granted it was needed, but with Great Divine Intervention being one of the decks that is trying to take the throne away from these black decks, having it be nerfed is a little iffy. The Molster's nerf is like, huh? Jill, it was never really like an oppressive deck, and in my opinion it is one of the more fair decks to play. It doesn't have anything crazy going on. You're trying to just beat people out with your hero art, and sure, they kind of go a high roll route with legendaries these days, but still, I mean, these Jill decks were really relying on Molsters to have a consistent way to explore, especially to keep up with the current meta, so the increased cost to 2 MP is really going to hurt them. Finally, a good one, Dual Dragon Hado gets its MP cost reduced to 2, and hopefully this will bring this obscure, totally unused legendaries into the forefront, and maybe it will help make up for the lack of Grizzled Veteran. I have very mixed feelings about this Artifact X rework. I thought it was in a good place. I was starting to use it more, enjoy it more. The 5 attack makes the victory condition very easy to secure, and the 6 cost prevents it from being destroyed by a lot of frustrating black destroys like Alexia, Corrosion, and Dark Destruction. But now we've reduced it to the MP5 cost, so it's a little bit more vulnerable to black's destroys. Remember, black being the color of this meta. We got a HP gain when it hits the field, which is great, but it means that to get the full value out of it, I need to have multiple units on the field already, and it's not going to be as good standalone. And then lastly, the 4 attack is going to make it so that it's harder to easily get that victory condition, especially when a lot of the 3 costs are sitting at the 2-5 stat range. So overall for me, I'm not too happy, but the ability to be played in dual color decks and the HP gain on play might be enough to change my mind. We'll just have to see with testing in the future. Verdugo got buffed a lot, which is great. It's a much better place than I thought it was before, especially only having to have 10 cards left in deck. But the Black Mill archetype isn't really doing anything lately. And I suspect we'll see this card a little bit more, but actually in black control decks, not black mill decks, because the control decks will just wait out, and this will just give them another strong finisher to close out those games. In review, the balance changes don't really seem to address anything about the current kind of black oppression we are facing in Teppen's metagame. The primary non-black deck, Great Divine Intervention, got hit with a nerf for Grizzled Veteran, which, doesn't really help the situation, and I'm worried that this is just gonna increase Black's stranglehold of the meta, which in turn forces people into these all in on one unit strategies like Metsu Shoryuken, which the black decks are currently struggling with. All in all, that creates this kind of unfun situation where you either don't have the answers or you just get overwhelmed by pure advantage. Now, a discussion of balance and my opinions on it deserves its own video, but these balance changes, they just seem a little out of touch with the current situation. And if you want a really good in-depth analysis and opinions on what the game of Teppen could use, make it a little bit better, make it a little bit more exciting, you should definitely check out Iowa the Boat's Reddit article. I will link it in the description. I think it's a great read, and just to get your mind thinking about all of the ways that terrorism has entered the game of Teppen. So that's going to be it for me today. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you got something out of it. So until the next video, keep on learning, having some fun playing Teppen with me here on the Durian channel. Peace.